Welcome everyone to part 2 of the Manananggal. We are going to be telling stories now about these creatures. So, get your cozy socks, grab your drinky drinks. I'm slowly sipping, and get ready because we are now telling the horrific stories of the Manananggal. Story 1. The Creature on the Roof. Long ago, in a small coastal village in the Philippines, there lived a young couple named Tomas and Elena. I don't know why that's how I'm pronouncing them, but that is how I am pronouncing them. Their home stood on stilts above the earth, like many houses in the region, with woven bamboo walls and a nipa roof that rustled softly whenever the wind came in from the sea. Elena was expecting their first child. In those days, pregnancy was both a joy and a danger. Women gathered around expectant mothers with herbal teas, prayers, and protective charms. And yet, alongside the excitement, there were whispers, quiet warnings about creatures that hunted in the night. One evening, an old woman from the neighboring house pulled Thomas aside. "You must keep watch," she told him. "Watch for what?" Thomas asked. The old woman's eyes narrowed. "For what flies when the moon is high." Thomas laughed politely, but that night he noticed something strange. The village dogs began to howl. Then came a slow, deliberate sound above the roof. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Thomas sat upright in bed. The scratching stopped, but then he heard something else. The soft, leathery flap of wings. He rose quietly and took the lantern from the table. Outside, the night was thick with fog. The palm trees swayed gently, but otherwise the village was silent. Thomas stepped out of the house and looked upward. Nothing. But when he returned inside, Elena stirred uneasily in her sleep, and above them, something moved again. Scratch, scratch. The next morning, Elena woke pale and exhausted. "I feel drained," she said. The old woman returned when she heard this. Her face grew grave. "It has begun," she whispered. That night, Thomas prepared. He placed garlic and salt around the windows. He kept a blade beside the bed and refused to sleep. Hours passed. Then the scratching returned. But this time, it was louder. Something heavy landed on the roof. Thomas rushed outside and raised the lantern. What he saw froze his blood. Hovering just above the roof was a horrible shape, something that looked like the upper half of a woman. Her long hair streamed behind her like dark smoke. From her back stretched enormous bat-like wings, and below her ribs, there was nothing. Her body ended at the waist. The creature turned toward him, its eyes glowing in the lantern light. Then it shrieked and vanished into the darkness. The old woman later told Thomas the truth. A Manananggal had come to their village, and it would not stop hunting until someone found where the creature hid its other half. After Thomas's encounter, the villagers gathered. They knew the stories well. A Manananggal could fly freely through the night, but its lower half had to remain hidden somewhere nearby. If they could find it, they could kill the creature. The villagers began searching the surrounding fields, forests, and abandoned huts. But days passed with no sign. Meanwhile, Elena grew weaker. Each night the scratching returned. Each morning she looked more pale. Finally, an elderly healer came from a nearby village. She studied Elena carefully. Then she said something that chilled the entire room. "The creature is feeding." That night, the villagers set a trap. They extinguished every lantern and waited in silence. The moon climbed slowly into the sky. Then the sound came again. Wings. A shadow passed across the roof, But this time, Thomas was ready. He burst outside with a torch. The creature shrieked and fled into the sky. Several villagers followed in the direction it flew. They ran through rice fields and into grove trees, and there, hidden beneath tangled roots, they found something horrifying. The lower half of a human body, still and waiting. The healer stepped forward. "Quickly," she said. The villagers covered the severed waist with salt, garlic, and ash. Moments later, a terrible scream echoed across the forest. The upper half of the creature returned, wings beating wildly. It tried desperately to reattach itself, but the salt burned its flesh. The garlic smoked like fire. As the sun rose above the trees, the creature shrieked one final time. Then it collapsed. When daylight came, the villagers discovered the truth. The body belonged to a woman they all knew, a quiet neighbor who had lived among them for years. And from that day forward, the villagers never forgot the lesson. Some monsters wear human faces. Now, I'm going to take a pause here. I wonder if these people also just came across, like, in the Philippines, were people coming across the lower half of women's bodies, and that fed into the mythology, the folklore idea of the Manananggal? And if that's true, was there a serial killer, or were women being murdered and severed, and I don't know. It's just a thought that has occurred to me. If these people were actually finding the lower half of women's torsos, and even the upper half, were they finding women when they wake up and they find a woman detached from herself? And so, I don't know. Is this purely folklore, or was there something else going on? I don't have that answer, but now I'm curious. Okay, next story. In another village, generations earlier, there lived a respected midwife named Aling Rosa. She had helped deliver dozens of babies and was trusted by every family in the region. Whenever a woman went into labor, Aling Rosa would arrive with herbs, warm water, and calm wisdom. But strange things began happening. Some newborns grew sick without explanation. Animals were found dead in the fields. And villagers sometimes reported seeing a shadow flying across the moon. One young man began to suspect something. He noticed that Aling Rosa was always the first person to visit pregnant women and the last person to leave. One night, he followed her as she walked home through the forest. Instead of entering her house, she disappeared behind an old tree. The young man crept closer, and what he saw made him gasp. Aling Rosa stood alone in the clearing, and then her body began to split. Her torso pulled free from her waist. Great wings unfolded from her back. The young man realized the terrible truth. The trusted midwife was a Manananggal. He ran back to the village and told the elders. The next night, they followed her. When the creature flew away, they found her hidden lower body beneath the tree. They covered it with salt and crushed garlic. When the winged monster returned, it could not rejoin itself. And as the sun rose, the creature that had once been Aling Rosa died in agony. The villagers mourned the loss of the woman they had trusted, but they also understood something chilling. The Manananggal did not always come from the shadows. Sometimes it lived quietly among them for years. And this also brings me another question. Were probably men, but maybe sometimes women, claiming that they saw a woman in their village, someone in society who had upset them or offended them, or if it was a man, maybe she wasn't willing to submit herself to him. And so these people decided to get rid of them and claim them to be a Manananggal. Now, obviously, you wouldn't actually be able to see them separate or have bat-like wings or anything, but was an accusation good enough for there to be retribution? Here's our next story. Long ago, along the quiet coast of a small island village, there lived a fisherman named Mateo. Mateo was known for two things: his patience with the sea and his stubborn refusal to believe in superstition. While others spoke nervously about spirits in the forest and monsters in the night, Mateo simply shrugged and returned to his fishing nets. "The sea is the only thing that can kill a man," he often said. But the elders of the village knew better. They had seen too many strange things beneath the moon. One humid evening, Mateo prepared to take his small wooden boat out into the dark waters. The best fishing, he insisted, happened before dawn when the fish swam close to shore. As he pushed the boat into the water, an old fisherman called after him. "Be careful tonight," the old man said quietly. Mateo grinned. "I've been careful my entire life." The sea was calm that night. The moon shone brightly on the water, turning the waves into silver glass. Mateo cast his nets and waited. Hours passed peacefully. Then something strange happened. The birds fell silent. The air grew still. And above the water, Mateo heard something he had never heard before. The sound of wings, not the flutter of seabirds. These were heavy wings, slow, deliberate. Mateo looked up. At first he thought it was a giant bat, but as it passed in front of the moon, he saw the terrible truth. It was a woman, or at least the top half of one. Her long black hair streamed behind her as enormous wings carried her through the sky. Below her ribs, there was nothing but darkness. Mateo's blood ran cold. The creature circled the shoreline, drifting toward the village. Then suddenly it stopped. Its head turned. It had seen him. They stared at one another across the moonlit water. Then the creature's scream was so piercing that Mateo nearly dropped his lantern. The winged horror swooped low over the boat, the wind from its wings rocking the small vessel violently. Mateo grabbed an oar and swung wildly. The creature shrieked again and flew away towards the shore. Mateo returned to the village before sunrise, pale and shaking. When he told the elders what he had seen, they exchanged grim looks. One of them spoke quietly. "You have seen a Manananggal." From that night forward, Mateo never mocked the old stories again, and he never fished alone in the dark. The hunter of the forest. Deep in the forest of the Philippines, there once lived a man named Durago. Durago was a hunter known for his bravery. Wild boars, snakes, even crocodiles. None of them frightened him. But one year, the nearby villages began to suffer strange tragedies. Pregnant women grew weak overnight. Animals were found drained of blood. And villagers began to hear wings beating through the trees long after sunset. The elders knew what it meant. A Manananggal had come to the forest. Most hunters refused to track the creature, but Durago stepped forward. "I will find it," he said. The elders gave him a small pouch. Inside were salt, garlic, and sacred ash. "If you find where it hides its lower body," the eldest man told him, "spread these across the wound. It will never rise again." For several nights, Durago followed strange signs in the forest. Broken branches, strange claw marks on trees, the distant sound of wings. Finally, one night beneath a full moon, he saw it. The creature glided silently between the treetops. Its wings were enormous, its torso pale in the moonlight. Darago followed carefully, moving through the shadows. At last the creature descended into a clearing, but instead of landing, it hovered. Then it lowered itself toward the ground. Darago watched in horror as the flying torso reattached itself to a lower body hidden beneath leaves. The creature folded its wings and became a woman once more. Darago waited until the next night, until she left the clearing. Then he stepped forward. The lower half of the body lay there, motionless. Quickly, he poured the salt and garlic across the severed waist for sunrise. It screamed with a sound that shook the entire forest. Darago never saw the monster again, but villagers claimed that sometimes, on very quiet nights, the wind carried the echo of a distant shriek through the trees. Our last story, The Woman Who Could Not Escape the Curse. Not every story of the Manananggal is about a monster. Some are about tragedy. In a quiet farming village long ago lived a woman named Lyra. Lyra was gentle, kind, and beloved by her neighbors. But one evening, a traveling sorcerer came to the village. He offered charms and potions, promising protection from illness and misfortune. Lyra refused his offers politely, but the sorcerer grew angry. "You will regret refusing my gift," he told her. Days later, strange things began happening to Lyra. She felt weak during the day. At night, she suffered terrible dreams. Then one evening, she woke to a horrifying sensation. Her body was changing. Her bones cracked, her back burned, and before she could stop it, her body tore itself in half. Wings burst from her back. Lyra screamed as she rose into the air. She had become something terrible, a Manananggal. For weeks she tried to fight the hunger that came with the curse, but the urge to hunt grew stronger every night. Desperate, she begged the village healer for help. The old woman listened carefully. "There is only one way to end the curse," the healer said sadly. Lyra understood immediately. The next night she walked into the forest and hid her lower body beneath a large tree. Then she flew into the sky one final time. At dawn, the villagers found her remains. The curse had ended, but they remembered her not as a monster. They remembered her as a woman who had sacrificed herself to protect them. And from that day forward, the villagers told her story as a warning. Some monsters choose evil. Others are created by it. And I think that is so true in real life also. There's always an origin story. All right, that one was sad. They're all kind of sad, but that is it. We are finished with the Manananggal. I hope you had fun. I hope that this wasn't too much of a downer. The Manananggal is complicated, I think, because it does represent the saddest parts of human life and human nature, or at least some of the saddest parts. So I hope that you have a great and good mixed into one word. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope that you're able to find light and creativity in your life, and just remember, these videos are for fun. They're not educational. I am doing my best to get the facts, and we use the facts so that we can create with honor and intention. So I hope you enjoyed this segment. We will be continuing into Filipino folklore in our next video. And that's it. If you haven't, maybe like, subscribe, come hang out. And if you have any mythological creatures or gods or a pantheon or something that you want to discuss, put it in the comments below and I will see about working it into the schedule. Right. I'll see you guys later. Bye.